Hey everyone, welcome to Hub and Spoke, a storytelling platform produced by the Hurt Hub for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Davidson College. I'm your host, Liz Smith Brigham, Davidson class of 2004, and director at the Hurt Hub at Davidson. Every other week, we'll feature Davidson alumni and other members of our community who've started their own businesses, who are investing in innovation, and who are at the leading edge of solving the world's most pressing challenges. Through these conversations, we hope to inspire and connect the next generation of innovators and entrepreneurs leading lives of leadership and service. Hey everyone, welcome to Hub and Spoke. This is our first episode. But before we get started, just a quick few housekeeping items. We will host a Q&A after I get to have a chat with my good friend Mbye and Njie here in a minute. Please ask questions in the chat and direct them to my co-host, whom you all might know very well, Maria Howell, the Director of Alumni and Family Engagement here at Davidson. So if you wouldn't just mind selecting her name in the chat, and send in your questions, you can do so at any point in the conversation, and we'll leave about 20 to 30 minutes at the end. We will also be sharing a recording of this, so if y'all had family, friends, others that you knew who had intended to come but couldn't make it, feel free to check out that recording. So stay tuned to our newsletter, the Hub, and the Hurt Hub at Davidson social media channels for more details. And of course, at any point in time, if you do have more questions for Mbye, you can get in touch with him at mbye@legalequalizer.com. And I'll remind everybody about that at the end as well. But I'm so excited to get started. Welcome, Mbye, to the show.
Unmute. Hey, how you doing?
Wow, this is a long time coming. Mbye and I have known each other now for 20 years. He is the CEO and founder of the Legal Equalizer app. That's legalequalizer.com. And we welcome you to our first episode of Hub and Spoke.
Glad to be here. Honored to be the first person you picked.
Of course. Well, and one thing that I wanted to start off before I give your formal introduction and we really start getting into it with questions, I really wanted to highlight, Mbye, I think, of our 20-year friendship across a variety of different things, whether it was union board or anything going on at Davidson or that show on Walt we used to have where we would talk about what happened Sunday night on the Pound Patterson court. All of those lovely things going back and forth. The one thing that I really value, or the thing that I most value about our friendship, is how you hold me accountable. And you hold Davidson College accountable. And so it's in that spirit that we come to this conversation. What we're really trying to build here is a community of entrepreneurs and innovators just like you, and to inspire that next generation. But it's really important that we build a community on trust, accountability, integrity, and inclusion. So just wanted to enter into the conversation in that spirit. And I thank you so much for being a friend for so long.
I appreciate you for being a friend for this long.
Okay.
20 years.
I know. I feel really old now. But okay, so let me do your formal intro, and then I have some prepared questions for you based on some research and obviously conversations we've had over the past few years. So officially, Mbye Njie was an anthropology major at Davidson. So for those of you who are anthropology majors or students or recent alumni, keep your ears going for how you can translate your anthropology major into a career like Mbye has had. Since he graduated in 2004 with me, he's been an activist and founder, of course, of the Legal Equalizer app, which is a mobile app that allows users to capture police encounters after being pulled over, automatically notify loved ones in real time, provide information on legal rights involving that encounter, and receive legal advice at the scene. Mbye first launched the version of the app in 2015 after seeing the fallout from the Michael Brown case in Ferguson, Missouri, in St. Louis, where I'm from, and pulling his own personal experiences with law enforcement as well. He's originally from Gambia, West Africa, and moved to the US in 1990 when he was just 9 years old. Since living in the US, Mbye has dedicated countless hours to helping others, including volunteering at homeless shelters and local churches, as well as helping with the Fair Fight and New Georgia Project organizations. Mbye has just recently joined the Alumni Association board at Davidson. Thank you for your service. and lives in downtown Atlanta. I was corrected there, so absolutely downtown, inside the perimeter, with his husky. So thank you so much for joining us. I, would love to really get started, and we all learn through narrative and through storytelling, and that's what today is about. I would love for you to just paint the picture, give us a little bit of context from your Davidson experience up until the point that you founded Legal Equalizer, and we'll take a pause there and dig in a little bit more. So could you share that with us, Mbye?
Yeah, so Davidson experience was great, enlightening, but also prepared me for life, and I didn't know it prepared me for kind of what I'm doing today. So our class at Davidson was like the first large class of African American students that were mainly like public school students that they had at Davidson. And so I don't know how ready we were for Davidson and how ready Davidson was ready for us at the same time. But that's kind of what I enjoyed about my Davidson journey. When I look back at it, is what helped me grow. A lot of aspects of my app came from my experiences at Davidson. And so I always talk about, the times we went off campus and coming back on campus, having actual local Davidson police pull us over. If we went off campus 10 times, probably 4 or 5 times coming back, we were going to get pulled over and stopped and searched or anything like that. And so when I think about what made them stop pulling us over, it was using that Davidson ingenuity back then. And back then we went to the library and printed out a ton of laws for the state of North Carolina, highlighted the county. And the next few times we were like, sure, here it says, if you want to search us, you need a warrant and you need a sheriff. We can wait. We normally wait anyway. And so we have, so that's one of the things where I decided, okay, when I built the app and it was something like that, I wanted people to have some sense of laws and things like that in there. So when I left Davidson, I had no idea what I really wanted to do at that point in time. I went into Davidson thinking I was going to go to law school. I was on mock trial for 3 years, traveling across, doing mock trial things. Senior year, we had a documentary made for an anthropology class on rappers in Charlotte. So I thought I was going to go to film school after that. And so I was just, pretty lost when I think about it. So my first job outside of Davidson ended up going up to Baltimore. And so to work for there was a lady there whose daughter went to Davidson, and she liked hiring Davidson people because she was like, y'all could write well. Mm-hmm. And so I had a job working at Morgan State and at Johns Hopkins doing research on health disparities. Now, I absolutely despised it because if you know me, that job consisted of 90% of me behind a computer, researching, typing, and not talking to people, not interacting with people. And so I did not enjoy that at all. So I left that job after a year, went home to Macon for a few months, and then I moved back to Charlotte and actually lived in the town of Davidson for a little bit. And then I couldn't even really find a job for the longest time. I was baffled. I moved to Charlotte because I was like, I got a Davidson degree. That Davidson degree should help me find a job. Couldn't find anything. So then I took a job doing door-to-door sales. And it was cold calling. It wasn't like we were appointed, and we weren't selling big things. We were selling coupons for Braves and the Charlotte Bobcats. And at the time, and we were selling coupons for spas, and it was all commission based. And so I got into that because when I saw, I was pitched on getting, building your own business. So I already knew when I was doing that, okay, I kind of have an entrepreneurial spirit. Why in the world am I doing door-to-door sales and taking people out for interviews and building a team and explaining to them? But I was also able to build a team a lot easier than most because I could build a story, build a narrative. And so when people would have me, it was funny, my bosses would challenge me sometimes. They were like, you see that girl with high heels over there? We're going to send you out with her. We're going to see how long you last. And then by the end of the day, she's laughing. I was like, yeah, I want to do this. And I'm like, they were like, huh? And I'm like, yeah, you guys are outsmart me. First thing we did, I told them exactly what we're about to do. We stopped at Walmart, bought some flip-flops or bought some cheap shoes, and we got to working. And so, and that job kind of is part of what also led me with Legal Equalizer and stuff like that, because during those 5 years I did that job in North and South Carolina. And I was driving around to the smallest counties, most remote places. So when I tell people literally I had been pulled or stopped over on the low end 80 times, but if you want to be accurate, probably 110 to 120 times, that's not exaggerating at all. That's literally, I've been in towns in South Carolina trying to sell Braves tickets where the cops escorted me out the town. Well, you come back here, you're getting arrested tomorrow. And so I understood all of that. So when I left that job, moved back to Atlanta, and then just kept on getting into sales. I ended up, doing sales for Apple for a little bit. I was a business sales where I would call local corporations and try to convince them to switch their whole operation from using PCs to go into Macs and iPads and iPhones and connect and all of that stuff. So I used all of that sales stuff, and I was actually even in sales up until I decided to quit and focus fully on Legal Equalizer.
Okay, and I have another question around some of those pieces that you highlighted there. So thank you for giving us that background. I think it's really helpful, and I appreciate you being so honest too about all the different interests and varied interests that you have. I think that resonates a lot with Davidson students and Davidson alumni as well. I want you to put us in, if we could, sort of walk in your shoes at that moment where Ferguson's happening, that's what we saw. I'm sure there was other stuff happening that we weren't seeing. You had these personal experiences, but I think many of us who have been in this sort of entrepreneurial space before, innovative space before, understand that there's huge risk, not just financial risk, maybe personal risk, professional risk, et cetera, to venturing out on your own. So can you talk to us a little bit more about the decisions, the feelings, like bring us back to that moment when you said, I can't stop, keep doing what I'm doing, and I got to start this app?
So it was interesting. So Ferguson, I remember when I first read the story, I didn't believe any of how it happened, because I was like, I've seen that encounter a million times as a Black man in America. I was like, what happened was probably Mike Brown was crossing the street, Darren Wilson probably rolled down the window and told him to stop or do something, and Mike Brown turned around and cussed him out, and then Darren Wilson's pride was like, oh, what'd you say? And it escalated from there. And I've seen that happen as a Black man. I've seen it happen with Black people all the time, where cops will say something and they'll say something back. Then the cop's like, oh, what'd you tell me? And then it escalates from there. So my whole question during Ferguson was, how come nobody had a recording? And the reason I asked that is because, once again, I came from a public high school in Macon, Georgia, which was predominantly African-American. And I had all my Davidson people, which is predominantly white. And the messaging on Facebook couldn't be further apart because of people's experiences. And I understood that. I was like, a lot of my white friends from Davidson have never had to deal with this. They didn't understand what was going on. That was the first time they even were like, police brutality? What are you talking about? And a lot of them were honest. And I was like, no. And my Black friends were like, oh no, here's what probably happened. And here's what's really gonna go. So my whole point was, how come nobody had a camera? How come nobody had a camera? And so I kept on literally looking for apps that would record and would let people know when you got pulled over for the longest time. And it just kept on going on and on and on. And so after, Darren Wilson again indicted, and then that December was when I got pulled over 3 times in like a week and a half here in DeKalb County. Even though I live in Fulton now, but DeKalb County. And it was the 3rd time on my way to work where, the officer, pulled me over and said I had a warrant for my arrest. And I was like, no, I don't. And he was like, how are you so sure? I was like, because I've been pulled over twice. Neither one of them said anything. And I actually have a ticket from the other officer. And, when he used the excuse of, well, maybe the system was down. I was like, well, no, how's the system down when it's a printed ticket? It's not a handwritten ticket. How's the system working enough for him to print out this ticket, but not for him to figure out I had a warrant? And so, I wouldn't have minded if he just like, let me check on it and we're good. And we're, doing all of this other stuff. No, but like the time he handcuffed me and put me in the back of the car is at the point in time where I was like, oh, okay, this is not about that. And then it was like, I couldn't call my job. And then instead of him being in the car, listening to the radio about that so-called warrant, he's walking around my car for 20 minutes. And then it's like, it's an invalid warrant. And so I mentioned already how many times I've been pulled over. That was the first time in my life that I felt the need to go and make an actual police complaint. And I know I've been profiled before and I didn't do it. And so my mom and I went there and they were like, you know what? You have to do, he was right to do what he had to do. If he thought it was a warrant, then maybe it was something wrong on his end. They just made excuses, complete excuses, to like do something about it. So at that time it was, okay, I want to make an app, and it was morbid. It wasn't about, anything. It was, if I get pulled over, I don't want people to be on Facebook and on TV like, what was he doing? Why was he fighting? It was literally, I want to let my mom know I've been pulled over, and here's a video of you guys seeing me saying yes sir, no sir before anything happened. That's where the idea first started. And then when it really kicked in, and that's, that December, around that December, like New Year's of 2014, like 2015, going to 2015, is when I really couldn't just get it out of my head. And so I put a deadline. So if nothing by January is in the App Store by January, I'm going to see what we can do. And I had no idea about anything to build an app. And so that's literally when I first had that little bit of money I had. I got somebody that knew a coder. I was like, can you put anything together? And then we had that GoFundMe that started, where I was like, okay, let's build it. And I was still working at the same time. So I was still holding a job. And the GoFundMe was helped by Davidson, the greatest, because literally it was up for like 3 days. I'd raised about $1,000 or so. And then our good friend Kate Arletta hits me up, like, hey, by the way, did you know I work for the HuffPost and we can get an article about this? I'm like, I had no clue. And so she put that article up, and then that thing just skyrocketed. We had enough money to finally build our first thing. And I still was working, going to work and still trying to focus on the app. So then fast forward a little bit later, we have, just a little bit later, we have the death of Sandra Bland. And that was when I was like, okay, and that was the one that put me over, like, okay, this is something my app could have actually saved her life. And that was the one where I had a full-on belief that had she had this, because her loved ones would have known exactly where she was when she got pulled over, and they would have had a video of, she got arrested for not putting out her cigarette. She wouldn't have been in jail all that time. And so that's when I was like, all right, this is ridiculous. And so it was a little bit after that where I finally was like, you know what? I can't keep doing 2 jobs at the same time. Let me focus on this full time. And that was a decision where I was like, my heart wasn't even at the sales job anymore. I wasn't even selling really that much at that time. And my boss knew it. Everybody knew it, because they were like, yo, you could sell. What's going on? And I'm like, I'm not even trying to sell right now. I'm more focused on this. I'm reading articles. I'm doing this and that. And so that was the decision really at that point in time where I was like, all right, let's go full time.
Thank you for that, and shout out to Kate Arletta, really good friend of ours, and I love hearing the Davidson network connection there too. But can we dig in just a little bit more too, and because I hear this question a lot about financing, right? And GoFundMe, crowdsourcing, perfectly viable. Some people are like, you know what, I'm going to bootstrap. Maybe you get some, friends and family dollars here and there. Some people just go all out and I'm going to go pitch VCs. How did you, initially kind of make that decision of a funding path, but then also two, to say, like, how did you even forecast out how much runway you have? And then also maybe highlight a little bit about your business model so we can understand how, revenue might have been coming in the door at that point. So build out more of the kind of business case and then your personal choices around funding.
So that's funny, because honestly, I didn't know anything about funding. I had no idea about tech. I had no idea about business. I had not a single clue. And so that GoFundMe I started just because at that time it was a national conversation, kind of like it was this summer after George Floyd. And I was like, other people have to feel the same way I feel about that. And then the first person actually to then, like, hey, maybe I can invest. It seems like a good idea, was my godbrother. And I had no idea that he had his own company and was making money and all that, because I never talked to him about that, right? And he was like, oh yeah, I'm doing pretty well. So like he ended up, putting like another $25,000 to match what we just raised. And that was able to give us a little bit of money to build out the product even a little bit better and a little more leeway. And so I didn't even have a runway. We didn't know what a runway was. I literally and so most of our funding has been so bootstrapped piece by piece by piece. The first big piece of funding we got, which, I'd say big, and that was big for us, was $75,000. And that was from a Davidson alum, and he did that after he saw us win a pitch competition. And that was the second one he saw us win. So he was like, okay, you guys are onto something. And, and he was like, I'm gonna get, behind this. And then most of our, our largest funder is one of my best friends from Davidson, Jason Ford, class of, 04 with us. And, and even then, he never put in a large, humongous, $50,000 chunk at once. It was like, hey, Jay, I need money to pay a coder. Here, all right, here's $1,500. Jay, I need to pay this. All right, here's $2,000. And so it was piecemeal by piecemeal for us. And so we haven't even, the whole time in 6 years, we've raised about $350,000. And then when you count in like what I spent personally on my own, we're a little bit over $400,000 we spent, which if you know, for a tech company, most of that spend that in a couple of months, you know? And so that was the thing. And so right now I'm actually in the process of learning more about that venture process and getting into that, whether I want to go into venture, whether I don't, whether I want to keep bootstrapping it. And for us, it was also weird because we haven't made revenue, because when we first started, it wasn't an app built on the idea of making revenue. It was literally on saving lives. And then when I got into tech, when I got into some of these programs, that's what made me pivot, because it was like, okay, if you want to raise money, I can't raise money on just, I want to save their lives. Like people like, where's my return? And my investment, like my answer used to be, your return is people's lives to be saved. And they're like, no, we mean return on my investment. And so getting into tech was then where we had to pivot and start looking at other things. So after like 2 years of having the original app out, we then had to figure out, okay, how can this thing possibly make some revenue where we might get some legitimate investors? And so that's where I got the idea of bringing attorneys on, because I was like, nobody really knows how to contact an attorney when they actually need them. And so that was then the idea, okay, let's build out something for attorneys where then if somebody is stopped, you can contact your loved ones, but you can also maybe find a local attorney in that area that knows the laws in that and that can tell you what to do in real time. So for a DUI, if you got pulled over, you'd rather have a DUI attorney tell you, hey, here's what to do, rather than pay that $10,000 and have your license revoked and all the other stuff that comes with that stuff. And so that was then the next step. But then that's when we had issues, because we'd already raised money to build out this one app. But then now it's like, okay, we have to pivot. So now when I'm going to go pitch, they're like, where's the revenue? And I'm like, we don't have revenue yet. And so my argument I used to make with people all the time was I used to argue with them about how like other tech companies had a chance to grow and raise money without having revenue, but we were held for some reason to a different standard. And I'm like, guys, we're 3 years in, but Twitter was how many years in before they made any revenue? So I was like, Facebook was how many years in? So why did they have, all that? And I was like, and I'm saying we're not Twitter, we're not Facebook, but I would at least like a little bit of leeway to get the money to build out that product. And so we're still in the process of raising money now. We've got a C Corp and we got, all the stuff that needed to get legally done, because I didn't even know at that point in time when we were raising money, So like even my first ones, they raised money off the LLC I created just to create a company. Then somebody was like, oh no, you want bigger funds? Get a C Corp in Delaware. It's better. So that's what we went and did. We went and got a C Corp in Delaware, got shares, and so made everything, legitimate in that form, in that sense. And so now I'm in the process, like I said, of speaking with either ventures or possible angel, or just keep doing what we're doing with like separate individuals, like investing. Because for me, at the end of the day, it was just about making sure the product stayed up and kept on going. Because once we released, we had others that try to do the same thing. And I saw them fall off one by one. And so a lot of decisions I've had to make, in the past 5 or 6 years literally have been, will I pay my bill or do I pay the server space to keep the app up in the app store running properly and stuff like that? And that's just some of the decisions you have to make. And that's what I did on a lot of stuff. So that's kind of been the roundabout crazy funding and trying to raise money journey. But monetizing the app comes in a few ways. Like I said, the attorneys, once we get them on, will pay us a monthly fee to be on there. And so we're going to make it for the attorneys where if you get one phone call in a month, you're going to make that money back and then some, and then you probably have a client. Within our app, we also have, within the laws, we have what videos that we created ourselves, what to do when immigration is there, what to do at a traffic stop, what to do in a car accident. We're then also going to make that where one attorney per state will then pay us to advertise for that section. People maybe look at them as the subject expert. So if you're in North Carolina, we might have one attorney that'll pay us $5,000 a month to make that immigration video. So if people need an immigration attorney, they're like, look, this guy knows what he's talking about. We'll call him. And you do that times 50 states, and you vary it around. Do that same thing with a car accident, things like that. So that's one of the ways we have with that. And then on top of that, we're looking at doing a subscription model for the users. So for like kids in school, I've had a lot of parents who are like, hey, can I pay $20 a month where if my kid got pulled over, they can have an attorney be there in real time and I don't have to worry about it. So we're going to have something like that, because I know my mom would have paid, when I was in school, to have had that where every time I got pulled over, I would have had somebody knowing what was going on and knowing the law and being able to help me out as well. So we've got, like I said, multiple ways of monetizing it and building it out. And so we're in the process of finishing up and building out that attorney side of the app, where then they'll have their own app like an Uber and Lyft driver they can turn off and on, and they can make extra money, but also help people in real time that need it.
That's great. I was gonna say, take some water. That's good. I really appreciate, again, your honesty in talking through that, because that funding in general seems to be the most opaque. I've worked with startups for many, many years, and all across the board, and even myself, had to do a lot of self-education on what venture capital is and means, and what are all these series rounds, and
right,
like the bootstrap versus crowdfund, and all those things. And I think by bringing some more transparency to that, we help hopefully mitigate some of the double standard too, that you ran into as well.
And I tell people, don't feel bad if you don't know stuff. Like, I tell people that all the time. Like people I'm supposed to impress, I'm like, no, I don't know that. Like, I had a guy the other day, and he's trying to help me raise funds, and he was like, do you have a model? I'm like, what's that? And so, we had to walk through all of that stuff. So, like, that's one of those things as well, because people appreciate that. I used to be afraid and try to act, yeah, I know what a model is. Yeah. And they're like, can you send me one? I'm like, no, I can't. And so now it's just being transparent with people, and, because most people don't expect you to know everything. And so, like, that's actually helped me a lot, just, and I'm learning from that by telling people. So I tell people, don't try to fake the funk. If you don't know it, tell people you don't know it, because people will be glad to explain and help you out on it as well.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and is very much in keeping with the Davidson ethos, right? Of curiosity and a spirit to learn, and not trying to pretend that you know something that you don't. So I think that's well said. We've got about 5 minutes or so before we want to open the floor, and I already see some questions coming in through the chat. So just a quick reminder to folks, again, if you do have more questions, submit them in the chat to Maria Howell, please. And we're going back and forth. We're all teched out here. Got multiple computer screens going. So my question, I was watching an interview in preparation for our discussion today, and you mentioned Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Things About Hard Things. It's a book that really influenced me as well in my career journey. And I think one thing that, sometimes in this sort of celebritization of founders and startups in Silicon Valley and all that, it becomes very focused on just the founder. But what can really make or break you is your team. So could you speak a little bit about, and he has this line of, the team that got you here isn't necessarily the team that gets you there. I'm paraphrasing, but in that spirit. Can you talk a little bit about how you selected your first team, whether it was people that you were directly working, hiring, or even your PR agency and others that have joined you along the way?
Yeah, so the funny thing is, like, when I read that book, like, that was one of the things that let me know I had to get rid of my first team. I had an entire first, and I was scared, because when I got them, I didn't know anything about tech. So the guy that was coding was the only person I knew that could code. And, and I had somebody that I'd known from Davidson that was also on the team helping me out at that time as well. And I had a few other people at that time that were helping me out. And, I appreciate the help in them getting us that first app built and getting us to that point. But for me, it was a point where I don't expect anybody to be as passionate about it as I am, because it's my baby. And so, but I expect people to show some level of care and take initiative and passion about what we're working on. And so, one of the mistakes I even made, because like you said, the celebritization of Silicon Valley. So when I saw, I was like, well, I'm going to move my coder in with me, and I'm going to pay all the bills. And when I get to a pitch, I'm going to tell them, hey, yeah, here's how much sacrifice I've made. I have my coder living with me, and I'm paying all the bills and stuff. Nah, that didn't impress them, And what I found out, okay, yeah, the coder sat here for a year and made maybe one update, but didn't have to pay bills and didn't have to do any of that other stuff. And so at that time, I made a decision, like, I don't care if I don't have a coder at this point in time. You got to go. And I can find someone else. And same thing, like, the guy I helped was one of my best friends. And so when it came to it, I was like, hey, we're not getting contracts out in time. The contracts we're getting, it's not done properly. Like, there's typos, there's errors. You're working on other things. You're focused on other things, and you're putting your time into that. Then, hey, let's separate. Like, it's not your focus. It's no hard feelings. There's nothing, on that end of things. Like, I wish you best of luck, but I need more dedication and more time to where we're at. And even my coder now, my CTO, like, he's seeing the difference. Like, I still put the fear of God in him sometimes, because I'm like, yeah, you know how to code, but guess what? I now know a lot more coders because we've got articles, we got other stuff coming out. I know people I could replace you with. And so I was like, let's not get complacent because we're not where we want to be yet. And so it's finding those people that, for me, like, I love when my coder calls me. It's like, well, I actually disagree with this, and that. Here's why. Here's where I think we should go on. And I'm like, I appreciate that, because you've put time and effort into thinking about what we talked about, into thinking about the direction of where I want things to go. And you have the guts and you trust me enough to come and tell me, how you feel. And that's the way we've improved. That's the way we've gotten better. And so right now it's literally me and that other coder. I mean, and I'm blessed with the PR team that we have now, who's helped me out since, this summer, and that once again was a Davidson connection, a guy that went to Davidson for 2 years, that tells you how influential it can be. Like, and he transferred out of Davidson, but we've been friends for all that time. And he also saw from when I had the idea of the app to where we got to where we were going. And then, the final straw was when the George Floyd stuff happened this summer. And he was like, hey, I have a PR team. We can do something to amplify what you're doing, to amplify your message, and we can do something to help push that out. And so all of that, has helped out a lot. And it's all, at the point where we're at now, that's helped me get even more confident on, hey, if Corey screws up, I've got somebody else, that can go. And I even play that against him sometimes. I had somebody work on the Android, and I was like, Corey, Jamal's doing a way better job on this than you're doing on iOS right now, moving faster. Like, do you want him to come be the CTO, or do you want to catch up? And so, like, you can tell, it's that gut feeling of, okay, who's there with you and who's not there with you. And so that's what it is. Like I said, I love the fact that my first team helped me get to where we were, but they weren't gonna, the team to help me get to where we needed to be. Because I think if I honestly still had that first team, we still would be going in other directions that weren't gonna help us advance the way we wanted to advance.
Thank you for all that. I mean, that resonates so much with me too. I've, built teams out across from startups to Disney parks and everything in between. And I think your point about transparency and that mutual respect to push back on your ideas really is meant to push things further and make things better. And you can't operate with just people who are saying yes to you all the time and taking orders. You really
and part of that is growth. Part of that is trying to train, right? Because he's younger than me. I mean, he's 25, 26. Kid just graduated from Morehouse like a couple of years ago. And so he doesn't know how to lead. He doesn't know leadership, doesn't know training. And so that's what I'm training him as well, is seeing that. And so I always, like, if I yell at him, I have to come back and apologize. Like, hey, I don't want you to be that type of leader when you have a team. That was my beat. I overreacted. I shouldn't have come at you that way. And so it's like also training, because like I said, I know, and I told him, and he believes in it as well, because he saw it from the get-go. I was like, I believe in the next 6 months, Corey, we're going to have enough funds to start hiring people, to have a team. And I was like, and I want our work environment to be something that's positive, that's nurturing, and that's loving, and that says we care about you. And so, and I want to show that from top down. And so that's part of it as well, is teaching them how to train others.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And I know we're right just after 12:30, so we're going to pivot a little bit because there are questions coming in. I know there was a specific question about the book. It's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, who's the co-founder of Andreessen Horowitz, one of the sort of starred venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. But it's a great read, so do pick that up. So I wanted to flip over to some questions that we've gotten for the audience. This person you probably know, Dr. Fuji Lozada. So this question comes, it says, Mbye, we still use Off the Top of the Dome in class as an ethnographic film example.
Yes.
Can you say more about how both your curricular experience in anthropology and your co-curricular experience as a student activist, and I might say as well on Union Board, by the way, has helped you in your entrepreneurial life?
Yeah, I honestly loved anthropology because it gave me a different way of looking at things. And Davidson did too. And so when I went to Davidson, I knew I was going to either be a poli-sci or history major. Like I knew it. I was going to be the next great attorney in the United States of America. Like, like that was my goal. And so I took a couple of poli-sci classes. I took a history class at Davidson, and I looked at the other courses. And what got me was that it wasn't focused on what I wanted to study, which I wanted to study more international and more specifically African politics, because I wanted to study like my Gambian side and wanted to get that. And so Dr. Fairley was the one that sat me down. I was like, well, anthropology is not all about, digging up Mayan ruins and looking up, fossils and stuff like that. He was like, there's something cultural anthropology and social anthropology where you can study people and study cultures and study that. And so that's kind of what I've kind of appreciated like in my whole life. Even when I did door-to-door sales, I used to like pick up things and I didn't realize it was some of that anthropological stuff. So when I used to go in like my iceberg, I had a higher success because I could go in an office and quickly look at a picture or look at something and then connect to that person based on that picture. So I could come in, and if I came to your office and I saw a picture of like your kids with a Cubbies hat or something like Chicago, huh? Or White Sox, or no, St. Louis
Cardinals. Come on, Mbye.
Cardinals hat, yeah, with a Cardinals hat. Then I would relate something to St. Louis or to baseball or something like that. And so it's that ability to relate to others. Like that's my biggest love of anthropology is, I could go to Brazil, which I studied abroad in, and I could walk in the favela and I could look around. Okay, now I can think about, okay, let me study how the Black folks in Brazil are living and compare it to Black people in America. Let's compare how the slave trades in both places affected each other. Let's talk about white supremacy in both places. And so you have those nuances with anthropology. And that's kind of what I feel has helped me develop and even advance some aspects of the app as well. When it started, it was just policing, it was about me. We added immigration because other people came in. We added domestic violence because I spoke with a women's group that was like, hey, this app can be used for these reasons. Active shooting after Parkland. I had mothers that call me and was like, hey, can you do this when my kid was there? They can hit this so I can know where they're at in the school. And so like we added some of these other resources and things like that. So it's that ability to have an open mind, that willingness to learn, and that willingness to also explore other cultures and things like that. And I think, and willing to be wrong sometimes. Like I also thank anthropology for being, the one to make me go out and say, I want to speak with police departments when I first started this app. I want to get their perspective. I want to get their side of things. And I don't think if I, was a liberal arts major or didn't go to Davis or anything like that, I don't know if I would have been as curious to go and learn from that other side and build things out if I just more gung-ho my way or the highway. And so I do appreciate all those lessons I learned from that.
Thank you for that. I think, one thing that I have said over the years to my team is that empathy is currency, right? And just what you were articulating of that curiosity, willingness to understand people's stories, cross-cultural engagement, trying to really pick up clues, whether it was vocalized or not. I think that is really, really important and well said. So we have a couple other questions. One comes from Jake Belford, the class of 2016. Hey, Jake. How much time are you spending on fundraising versus managing? And do you spend any time working on the product yourself?
I don't know how to code, so unfortunately I don't, but I pretty much manage all of our social medias and handle everything else with the company, any questions. And so I haven't had too much time to spend with fundraising, if I want to be honest. I haven't had time to go out and speak with a ton of people on that, but there are things coming down the pipeline that I'm excited about that will get our foot in the door and allow us to explain our product fully, allow us to explain what we want to build out, what the next steps are, and how big of a thing that this is. And so I'm excited about where those talks are going. I mean, the last person I talked to, here's how big they were. It's like this person's partner turned down the offer to run the Small Business Administration from the Biden administration, right? And so I talked to him the other day, and he literally stopped me. He was like, yo, you have $1 billion idea, if not bigger. And I'm like, I know. And he was just like, I just wanted to pause and tell you that because you probably haven't heard that. And I was like, no, I haven't heard that from too many people, but I knew what I had. And so getting that kind of, affirmation is good because, this has been a 5-6 year journey now of trying to build this out. And, like I said, and building it out on an average of 50, 60 grand a year is hard when you're spending money on legal, when you're spending money on tech development, when you're spending money on marketing, all other kinds of things like that. It's basically bootstrapping. But I'm excited to hopefully get that opportunity to raise some funds and get a legitimate amount of funds where we can legitimately put a team together. I can hire another coder. I can pay my current coder, have somebody that digs into all the data that we're going to be collecting, because that's another aspect of this, using the data we have to make actual change. And so it's a lot of plans and things we have down the road. And so I just can't wait to have that time to get the funding and to be able to build out that team and see where we can go and take this.
Thank you. I have another question coming in from Tony Dick, class of 1985, a good Twitter friend of both of ours.
Yep.
So he's curious about how many users do you have now? And he is also curious about your marketing strategies. So just thinking about, I think he's asking more broadly too around kind of market sizing. How are you thinking about all your target addressable market or saleable market? And then what percentage of that do you feel like you've really tapped?
Yeah, so right now, our downloads after that Dr. Oz interview, we're close to about 200,000 actual downloads. And then registered users of people who have registered, email, and all that, we're a little under 60,000 of those people for that. And so luckily for me, like I said, I've got a PR team, that's been helping me out. They've been a godsend. And so they've been the ones that if there's anything where it's been a shooting or any incident, they'll send out feelers to that local market. So I've been doing a lot of local interviews with them. We just did a podcast. They have more of that stuff coming, but we also have some things coming down the lines with partnerships we're doing. So I can tell you guys because it'll be out before or soon, but we're about to have a partnership lined up with Rough Riders. So college me and Liz would be happy because it's DMX and Eve and those guys, right? And so I'm talking next week with Wu-Tang to do a marketing partnership with them as well.
What?
And so,
Awesome.
So we're getting some of these celebrities as well that are going to get on board, that are going to help push it out and market it and explain it, in the way of here's why you need the app, here's why you use it. And, we're doing different pushes and things like that. I'm working on something right now to try to get people to download it just for the things that might happen on the 17th and next inauguration day that we've seen the FBI people warn nationwide, So I'm telling people there's going to be protests in all 50 states at capitals and things. Download the app. If anything happens, at least have somebody know where you were. And maybe you can have that Zoom going in real time where they can have it recorded or you can have a video of it. That's, I'll stop there.
No, thank you for that. And obviously too, all of us in the Davidson family and community, this is a platform for you to get the word out, and we are, helping you. You've already been helped by so many in the Davidson community, but the more that we can continue to support, we are absolutely behind that. So Kevin Cook, class of 09, is asking, what advice would you give to more entrepreneurial minded students today?
Honestly, I would tell them to take the risk. Do it. Don't be afraid to fail. That's been my one thing. I've told people, I don't know, I believe it's going to be successful, but I don't know if it was going to be successful, but I wasn't afraid to fail. And that's my thing. I was like, I at least want the opportunity to build out my thing and give it a full try. Once my full platform is out, if it then fails, then cool. I gave it my best effort at it, But I'm in the belief where if I build out my full platform, this thing's going to skyrocket. It's going to go to another dimension. And so for me, that was the biggest thing, that helped me back for about 6 months. I thought about this app idea for 6 months before I finally made a move. Like, and it was twice a week, 3 times a week. And sometimes it'd be every single day I would think about this app idea. Every single day until when it got to the end. And I was afraid of, well, I don't know how to code. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. Well, we went to Davidson. We can learn. Like, we're smart people. We can research. We can find that we have resources. We have tools. And we stop ourselves a lot of times from doing things because we make excuses based on our fear of failure or based on our fear of we don't know how to do that. We don't know what we're talking about. And that used to be me. Like, I was like, that's probably why I didn't talk to as many people trying to raise funds, because I had no idea when they asked me a certain question about, you know, your market size or this and that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, huh? I was like, no, the app's trying to save lives and here's how it makes money. What do you mean on that? And so, like, the more you get into it, like, so if you have an idea, if you're a student, like, believe in yourself. Like, most Davidson students, I believe, are intelligent individuals who can look at the resources, look around, and don't be afraid. Like, everybody has failed at something. Like, there's not a single human being that I know of that has been perfect at every single thing they do and have won at every single thing they've done. Michael Jordan has failed. Like, LeBron has failed. Steph Curry has failed, right? And so, like, just don't be afraid, and don't be afraid to take that risk. And if you need help, don't be afraid to ask for help. Like, go ask people for help. There's plenty of people that are willing to help you. There are plenty of people from Davidson that reached out to me that I had no idea for stuff that would just reach out and be like, hey, I can help you with this. People I didn't even think cared about police brutality, didn't care about police violence. So get your ideas out there. Don't be afraid.
Well, thank you for setting me up for a shameless plug. But I will say that for any current Davidson students, please come to the Hurt Hub. That is our mission. It is a place where you are not getting a grade. It's an extension of your academic and personal life, and a place to take risks in a safe space. So we are here to help you. And we do even have a thing we call the Failure Fund. So up to $1,000 in micro grants for you to test the limits of your curiosity and what you're looking for. So, and I'm sure Mbye, at some point in time, when you're ready, you would perhaps be willing to serve as a mentor, or maybe even hire some students at Big Hub. Okay.
Anytime. If they want to reach out to me, they can reach out to me today. So, I mean,
that's great.
I'm here for the Davidson kids. I'm like Wu-Tang.
So we have time for a couple more questions. Class of 04 is really represented today. I'm excited. So Beth Daniel Lindsay, she says, speaking of data, could you talk a little bit more about privacy and how you intend to protect user privacy? Great question.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So as far as that was one of our number one worries when we first created it. And so as far as like the user privacy and things like that, all of that is incredibly secure. We have like double secure servers and everything is backed up. And even like the videos themselves, we don't own the videos for Legal Equalizer, the user owns them. And so we, have to even ask the user if there's a video there that they had. I can't go out and pull that video and then put it up on social media or do anything like that. I would have to ask them, hey, we saw this happen. Can we use that as well for you? Now, we haven't had any cases yet where we've had law enforcement subpoenas or anything like that. So that's going to be something when we get into it. We'll have attorneys and stuff like that to look heavier into that. But as far as just protecting data, it's one of the main things, even just building out the app. Like, Corey wanted to make sure it was like almost hack proof. Because that was the other thing we were worried about is, hey, what if somebody hacks this and now you have these people's info or this and that. And so that's one of our checks we have every single time we do something is we go back and check security and data. He's got things encrypted. And I wish I had him on because he has a lot more knowledge about the security aspect of things. And I probably have it written down somewhere, my patented answer of what I should say on that. But as far as, like I said, most of this, like what I wanted to make sure is that the users own the things, because that was the difference. So quick story, when I was about to release the very, very first version of our app, after we spent months building it out, the week before, the ACLU released the app that did the same exact thing almost a week before. And Matt was like, downtrodden. I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I've been waiting for months. Nobody else had an app. And a week before we release, here comes the ACLU with all the thunder with their stuff. And the big difference, though, is with the ACLU, when you shot a video, they owned your video. You couldn't even access it. You didn't know where your video went. You didn't know when anything happened. So they basically owned that data. And so when we built it out, my main thing was like, no, the data is going to belong to the user. It's going to, if the user wants to bring it out, they give us permission, then cool. But the data belongs to them and it's theirs to protect.
I think what you just
mentioned, I'll send you an email with the specifics on that too, Beth, if you want. I'll get Corey to send me everything he says.
Well, I think you really raised an interesting point, because this is something that I hear a lot from students or from young alums who are thinking about an app, and they're like, oh, somebody already did this, or when they start doing their research. But the world is a very large place. And so to your point about differentiation, I think that's really, really important, that you knew enough about that competitor, but you felt very strongly, and something that you can sort of hang your hat on and say, nope, we believe in putting this information and this data in the hands of our users, and that's how we're going to differentiate. And so there's space for both of you in that market, right?
Yeah, people think I'm crazy because I'm currently helping out 2 other people build out an app almost exactly what we're doing. And even those guys are like, are you nuts? I'm like, no. And my example every time is like, hey, when I go to Kroger, I was like, I can pick essential water. I can pick smart water. I can pick regular Kroger brand water. Do we complain about that? No, we don't, right? I was like, you have different types of toilet paper. Like, we have all kinds of different brands. So I was like, why is it when it comes to saving lives, we can only have one? And so the other thing is, anytime anybody else has an app or anything similar to what mine is, we get a spike as well. People always come and ask us. When Apple had their little Siri shortcut, you don't know how many people sent me, hey, Apple's copying your idea, and here's what they're doing. And I'm like, great, I love it. And I was like, you know why? Because I actually told Apple this a year and a half ago. Like, I have a video that we sent to them where I was like, here's what we're doing. And so I was like, and our download spiked up. So I don't mind helping out other people. I don't mind having competitors. I think it's healthy. And, I'm of the mindset, if somebody has a better product than mine, cool, they earned it. They beat me to it. They outworked me. They outsmarted me. They've thought about this way more than I have. But I'm of the mindset that it's going to take somebody to spend way more time than I have and have a lot more energy and passion about it to get to what I've got or what they're going to build. And so they don't even have a clue. I'm not even at like a quarter of what I want to build out. Like, we're not even 25% of the way there. So I don't know anybody else that's going to figure out magically the other 75% of what I want to build out already. And so, like, I'm confident. And if anybody has an idea like this, shoot me a message. I want to help you guys build it out as well. I want more of us out there. I want more people to get that.
Okay, we're going to do 2 questions on speed round. So try to limit to 60 seconds. Again, class of 2004 representing Mr. Charlie Hart. Does the company partner with police departments in any way? And is there any uptick from police organizations that want to increase transparency? How have you approached these conversations that may initially seem controversial?
Yeah, so I mean, my first endorsement was from my hometown police chief in Macon. He was the police chief of Bibb County. And we approached it, and he wrote letter on police letterhead, signed and everything. And we approached on accountability. And that's what he said. He was like, I actually want my officers to be recorded, because if they're doing what I trained them, that record is going to show them doing a good job. So most police chiefs and most departments are excited about, partnering up and using this, because they are of the mentality, if their officers doing the right things, there's nothing wrong with them being recorded. If they're doing the wrong things, they want to see that. And so I'm looking forward to working with a lot more people. I actually did a podcast yesterday with a current LAPD sergeant who helps with training and stuff like that. And we're talking about some ideas I have that could help the police themselves using technology. And so now we're going to talk about that, because I gave my idea of using 911 and changing it around, where now instead of calling them using this outdated technology, police can have a live stream of what that situation looks like. So when they come in, oh, I can see a video. I can approach it a lot different than just hearing, hey, there's a guy in the street with a knife going crazy. There's a guy in the street with a gun going crazy. Now I see a video. Oh, this guy's having a mental health issue. Let me call somebody that knows how to escalate it and de-escalate and talk him down, and we can get him to the hospital. And so, yeah, I've worked with them. I'll continue to work with them, and I want to keep working with them as well.
I think that's smart. And I really like the line that you used too. This is pro accountability. This isn't anything negative. It's pro accountability and helping everybody be more responsible and aware of what's going on. Okay, last question from Ed Park, class of 2013. It said, I view this app potentially as a stash it and hope I never have to use it type of app. Any thoughts or vision of advancing this app to have a more active engagement component?
Yep, absolutely. We're definitely working on that. We're going to do, I want to have more push notifications for the laws, and we're going to have more stuff when laws change so people can learn more about that. And we're currently discussing doing some things within the app where we can have, based on where you're located, people be able to actually have chats within the app about policing and about, you know, issues within their community, because that's what I'm trying to get as well. As policing is a local issue, as much as we make it national, it's a community issue. And so that's the next step, one of the steps we're going to make down the road in our roadmap. So you'll learn that about tech too. I can't skip all these other things just to do that, even though it's the hot stuff right now. But that's one of the plans we have. I definitely want to have a space in the app where if you're in Davidson, cool, you can then create a room and say, I want to chat about Davidson police and what they've done in the past 2 months. Or I want to chat about this situation that happened, down the street in Huntersville or something like that. So that's definitely ideas of getting more engagement and users down there as well.
Oops, sorry about that. Okay, hopefully we're just gonna wrap up. So we're just flipping. One, thank you, Mbye. This has been fantastic. I mean, I always love my conversations with you, but generally they're over text or one-on-one. So I'm glad we had, I think for the more, almost 50 people join us today, which is fabulous. And of course, as we mentioned before, we'll be getting the recording out and on all sorts of social channels. I'm sure that we'll be tweeting and retweeting it. Just a quick heads up for anyone. Again, this is Mbye's email address, the website as well, legalequalizer.com. Are there any kind of parting words you want to leave us with before we close out?
I appreciate, you guys having me here. You guys make sure to download the app, check out our website. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. And if you're a current Davidson student, make sure you guys get in touch with Liz, because hopefully I'll have enough money in the next little bit here where we can start hiring some of you guys to help us develop some aspects of this app. I want to use you guys as voice. The app is built for students like you. And I want you guys to help me out with some of your ideas, with some of your skills and some of your talent as well. So I'm looking forward to continue to work with you guys and continue to work with Davidson College.
Well, thank you so much. And just for anybody who wants more information about the Hurt Hub at Davidson, please do register for our newsletter. It goes out every other Monday, although next week, given the MLK holiday on Monday, look for it on Tuesday. I do want to say too that this is a startup unto itself as well. So we're being a little meta here if we go there. We have created this new storytelling platform. Obviously that you all know that this is our very first episode. Please, if you have any feedback for me directly, or of course, Mbye is there. My email is librigham@davidson.edu, or you can also find me through the Hurt Hub website. And just want to give a little shout out. We do have several other great speakers lined up for you coming up. So in 2 weeks, and I apologize, the date looks like it got caught off a little bit there. January 29th, that is Friday, January 29th at 12 p.m. Eastern, same format. We'll be featuring George Ramsey from the class of 2013 and Dean Williams, class of 2011, the co-founders of Bold Music in Charlotte. So thank you all today. For sharing the time, and for those of you who are watching the recording, thanks for taking the time. We'll see you on all the social channels and via email. Thanks, Mbye.
Thanks. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.